Hello, everybody, and welcome to the October 29th version of Trips and Traps, the second day at Aqueduct. We had to have a moving day, but we are back, and we're going to be covering some races from Belmont last week. I'm Andy Serling, Eric Donovan.
Yep, 6 races to bring you all from closing week at Belmont Park. We'll take a look at some of the races from the Showcase weekend. We got to call up because the turf races from Showcase will run on Sunday, but we'll get started a little bit earlier in the week. The 22nd race, number 5, Cora, the number 7 horse in here, and this is more of less of a trouble trip race as opposed to more of a pace-controlled race.
Right, she absolutely has no actual trouble in the running of the race, I should say, except the race just doesn't develop in a manner that gives her any chance. And you see her in second to last right now in those sort of greenish silks, and she'll basically, the horse behind her will drop out of the picture, and she'll, for all intents and purposes, be the last one in the group. And this was a race that I felt was dominated on the front end, and she ends up 4 wide or so on the turn, well back in the field in a race where everybody that finished close is right up close early. You see the 1, 2, 3 finishers are 1, 2, 3 now.
Cora will eventually finish 5th in here, but the horse that's leading right now, Tempest Storm, will finish 3rd in here. The horse that's sitting 2nd on the outside, West Ocean, wins the race, and the horse 3rd on the rail right now, Will Lost Without You, finishes 2nd. So everything that ran well in this race up front and saving ground.
Yeah, and there's Cora's widest of all out there. I mean, she's easily in the 4 path, if not even wider than that. And she's not that slow a horse, so it feels like she kind of lost her position. I don't know at the start. Joe Bravo was riding her. He hasn't been riding a lot at Belmont. Maybe he wasn't as familiar with the turf sprints here. The dynamics, it didn't matter who rode her, though, not to be too critical. She wasn't going to probably win this race. And she's a horse that I thought had some trouble in other races, might be interesting in there. And I think the fact that she finished 5th in here, beaten just about 4 lengths, when you consider how slow the pace was and how the race was run, she didn't have a fair chance. How good she is open to debate. I happen to think she's okay. Some people might not think she's that good. Maybe she isn't that good, but I'd love to get another chance in her. The problem is we're not running more turf sprints this year.
Yeah, you might have to keep your eyes peeled open for down at Churchill or maybe Florida as well. We were just talking a little bit before about the pedigree, Unbridled Song, Polish Numbers. Seems like the pedigree's there for a stretch out, but will she be as effective going long?
Yeah, I imagine that Belmont might give her a chance. Maybe he will try to stretch her out to mile to see what she can do. I'll be a little dubious and see how she does in there. And maybe if that doesn't work out, if there's a sprint at Gulfstream or we don't see her until next spring, Cora is a horse that I think is a little buried by some trouble in her races. She's better than she looks like, and we'll just have to see what she does from here, or where she ends up.
All right, we'll take a look at another race on the grass at Belmont from closing week. This is the 8th race from October 23rd. Interested in the number 7, Western Influence here from the Christophe Clement barn. Western Influence had run a few times already. This was Western Influence's first start with blinkers, however, and I think this might have backfired a little bit on the connections here. The horse broke well, is up close, sitting right outside the number 2 in this race. That's Kid Tornado, and Kid Tornado and Western Influence will get to know each other pretty well throughout the race. We'll have an incident in the stretch where Western Influence comes over on Kid Tornado. But right here, you see Cornelia Velasquez trying to be able to settle this horse down. And I think the blinkers on might have just had this horse a little bit too keyed up. You see Western Influence kind of throwing his head around a little bit there. Just think he's a little bit rank in the early going here. You see it especially now, trying to just settle him in behind some horses and get some cover there. And just didn't work all that well. And in the meantime, the horse that's on the lead, Mr. Sandman, is able to control the pace in here, and that makes him very tough through the stretch.
Yeah, certainly the dynamics set up well for Mr. Sandman. And this is a funny, Mr. Sandman was a horse who was entered for $25,000 a couple days earlier and scratched, and then he came out and beat this, moderately tough-looking allowance field in here. That was sort of an odd occurrence. My problem with Western Influence, and I bet Western Influence in this race, so I certainly like his chances going in. The problem is he had this visually impressive win to start his career out. And he came to New York, and he was just a little over his head. And then at Saratoga, he ran a very nice race. In fact, 3rd behind My Man Lars, a horse we're going to show later in the second segment of this program. And he kind of had dynamics in his favor, but he ran okay in that race. Then we don't see him for over almost 3 months after that race. He runs in this race, and you're right. He is buried in here. The problem is he was entered a $25,000 claiming race that was rained off the turf this week at Aqueduct. I don't know what to do with him.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with him either. I think this race is almost a throw-out for him. The trouble early on with the being ranking, and here we see him, kind of in a triangle there, a few horses in front. Cornelia Velasquez really can't ride him all that efficiently right there. He decides to go to the inside, cuts off Kid Tornado there, and they've second time they've been close together in the race. And then we'll see just barely, as the winner kind of goes off the screen here, you'll see Western Influence down in side, kind of have to steady there late. You know, I don't know if this steady really cost Western Influence anything. I think more than anything else, where he finished was a result of what happened earlier in the race and at the top of the stretch. But, you know, as you said, this is a horse that, you know, shown some potential early on and just don't know if he's peaked or not going forward anymore.
Yeah, and the other thing is his good races, his good races started out, he was close to the pace. I don't think of him as a grinder. I'd love to see him get a chance to make one run. I'm not thrilled with this horse. I think you like this horse more than I do, and I really don't like the fact that Christophe entered him for $25,000 in a claiming race, second off a layoff, after this horse did have some trouble and never had a fair chance to run in here, especially considering he was laid up. So I think there may be some issues. I'm not against playing him in the right spot, and I do think this race to throw out. I don't know if I trust him, though.
Okay, we'll move on to another race, and this is the Iroquois from Showcase Saturday. We're going to take a look at the 4 Gold for the Queen here, and this was a long shot in the race and out by Charlton Baker, going off at 26-1. Gold for the Queen is going to break awkwardly here under Eddie Castro. Went back and watched the head-on of the start. Couldn't really see anything definitive. Just, you know, breaks a couple lengths slowly there, bounces up a little bit in the irons. Castro does, and we see Gold for the Queen, you know, toward the back of the pack here early on. Castro's going to try to move her up sweetly here, and, you know, not move her too quickly and get into some position, but in doing that, just runs into a wall of horses here, has to steady and check, and, you know, get some mud thrown up in her face in here. And I just thought from this point on, very tough assignment considering the 10, rightly so. The winner of this race goes wire to wire, and the 4 is steadying back.
Gold for the Queen is a horse that's improved. There's no doubt about it, and you certainly don't want to get your horse into gear knowing that there's a wall of about 6 horses in front of you. On the other hand, she wasn't good enough to win this race. She had some trouble early in the race. She had nothing at the end of the race. And my question is, do you think that she's better than she looks on paper? Will she be that much better out of this race than she looks on paper?
I think she might be, just because, you know, to me this is the toughest race for fillies and mares, New York breds all year long, I think. And you get a big field in here, you have it over a wet track. And, yeah, you know, Gold for the Queen's in a good spot there. She has really no excuse from this point on to not make any kind of run. But I think what happened earlier in the race, considering, you know, the quality of the field, she's not going to face a field this deep, I don't think, again, for quite some time. And especially coming up with the winter, Charlton Baker, you know, does pretty well here at Aqueduct over the inner track. And this is a horse that I thought ran real well, winning the New York Oaks a couple starts back, up on the pace the whole way, a quick pace up at Finger Lakes, was able to beat Sapphire Sky and Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do, a couple of pretty nice New York breds, and I don't know, I think she's got some kind of future.
Yeah, I think she's improved. I don't know. I'll be interested. I know she won that mile 16th race there. Poor Do Re Mi Fa So. She just had a wasted 2009 after looking so promising last year, and she tried just about any spot a horse could try. Wrong, short, turf, dirt, didn't really matter. She just couldn't get it done. And of course, you know, she got the sloppy track like everyone did there, and I don't think it did her any favors. I don't know about Gold for a Queen. I hear what you're saying, and she certainly didn't have a fair chance, and that was a super tough race. I guess it depends where she shows up.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. A lot of racing, I think, ahead for Gold for the Queen this winter, as long as she stays down for Charlton Baker. Right. So, you know, I think she'll find a couple spots where she'll be tough.
I think she's only run 4 or 5 times this year, or at least recently. In November, she came back at Saratoga. Anyhow, does it for the first episode of Trips and Traps. Our email is tripsandtraps@NYRAinc.com. Love to hear your thoughts, ideas, anything you have to say, send them in. We appreciate it, and thanks for watching.
Come on back for the second segment.